The stars stretched like cold diamonds across the endless black sky. Commander Ryan Hale sat alone in the cockpit of his ship, the Odyssey, drifting on the far edge of known space. He was tired, his eyes heavy from long weeks of patrolling empty star lanes. Out here, there was no sound, no company, just the hum of machines and the echo of his own thoughts. Ryan was a soldier once, a fighter in wars that most people had already forgotten. Now, he worked as a scout, mapping quiet routes, searching for lost cargo, or helping stranded ships. It was supposed to be an easy job, a way to leave behind the chaos of battle. But deep inside, he missed the fire of adventure. He missed feeling alive. That was when his ship's radio crackled. A faint sound slipped into the silence. A broken signal. It was not the usual static or machine code. This sound was different, almost like a voice. Weak, distorted, full of pain. "Help anyone, please." Ryan froze. His hands gripped the controls, and his heart jumped. For weeks, he had heard nothing but silence. And now, a call for help reached him from the void. He leaned closer, adjusting the frequency. The signal repeated, but broken, as if it was traveling from very far away. The voice was soft, trembling, not human. It carried fear and something deeper, desperation. Ryan felt a shiver run down his spine. He had heard many distress calls in his life, but never one that sounded so haunting. He checked his scanners. The signal came from a dark patch of space, near an uncharted asteroid field. No colonies, no stations, nothing should be out there, which meant only one thing. Someone was hiding, or someone was running. Ryan's instincts told him to ignore it. He could report the signal to command and move on. But another part of him, the part that once fought to save lives, would not let him leave. He whispered to himself, "Whoever you are, I'll find you." The Odyssey turned, engines roaring as Ryan guided it into the unknown zone. The asteroid field was dangerous, filled with floating rocks that could tear a ship apart. But the signal was pulling him deeper, like a ghost calling him closer. The further he went, the more his systems began to glitch. Lights flickered, screens fuzzed with static, and alarms warned of magnetic interference. Ryan frowned. This was no ordinary distress call. Something was interfering with his ship, something unnatural, but he kept going, his eyes sharp. A soldier's courage burned in him again. Minutes felt like hours. The signal grew stronger, the voice clearer. He could almost hear words now. Not English, not any human language. It was soft, melodic, like a song mixed with sorrow. The voice begged, pleaded, cried. Then he saw it. A small object drifted between two massive asteroids. His scanners zoomed in, showing the shape of a wrecked escape pod. Its metal shell was torn open, smoke leaking into space. The signal came from inside it. Ryan's breath caught. "Someone's alive in there," he muttered. He pushed the ship closer, carefully sliding between the rocks. As he reached the pod, he switched on his exterior lights. The beam cut through the darkness, and what he saw made him freeze. Inside the shattered pod was a figure. Not human. A girl with silver blue skin lay motionless, her body tangled in broken wires. Her hair floated around her like strands of glowing silk, shimmering faintly even in the dark. Her chest rose weakly. She was breathing, barely. Ryan's heart raced. An alien, injured, stranded, and crying for help. He had read about other species, seen them in trade stations, but never this close, never this fragile. And certainly never one who looked so human-like, yet otherworldly. He knew the rules. First contact protocols, the dangers, the risks. But looking at her, pale and fading, he could not leave her to die. His soldier's heart would not allow it. As a ship docked beside the pod, the girl's eyes fluttered open for a second. They glowed faintly, like twin stars reflecting endless sadness. Her lips moved, forming strange words. Ryan couldn't understand them, but he felt the meaning. A plea, a whisper of life slipping away. Then she fainted. The ship's alarms blared. Asteroids shifting, Enemy signals detected in the distance. Time was running out. Ryan gritted his teeth. He had a choice. Leave the alien girl behind and save himself, or take her aboard and face unknown danger. His hands moved without doubt. He opened the hatch, pulling her inside. "Hang on," he whispered, his voice steady. "You're safe now." But deep inside, Ryan knew the truth. Nothing about this was safe. Something hunted her, something powerful enough to destroy her ship. And now, by saving her, he had painted a target on himself. Still, he didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt alive again. As the Odyssey roared away from the asteroid field, carrying its strange new passenger, the mystery had only begun. And Ryan Hale, once a soldier, now a rescuer, had no idea that this moment would change his life forever. The Odyssey's engines burned bright as Ryan pulled away from the asteroid field. His heart pounded, the echo of that haunting voice still alive in his head. He looked over his shoulder at the unconscious figure now lying in his med bay. The alien girl, fragile yet mysterious, was the first living soul he had seen in weeks. Her body was different from any species Ryan had encountered before. Her skin shimmered faintly, a soft glow pulsing in rhythm with her weak heartbeat. Her hair, silver white, spread across the bed like liquid light. Even in her broken state, she looked like something pulled from a dream or a nightmare. Ryan's training screamed at him, "Don't get close." She was unknown, dangerous, maybe even a trap. But another part of him, the human part, saw something else. Not an alien, not a mystery, but a living being, one who needed him. He moved quickly, patching up her wounds with the limited medical supplies he had. His hands worked with precision, wrapping bandages, sealing cuts with nanogel. He had treated soldiers on battlefields before, but this was different. Every time his hand brushed her skin, he felt warmth. Not just heat, but something alive, something that made his chest tighten. Suddenly, her body trembled. Her eyes shot open, glowing faintly in the dim room. She gasped, her breath sharp like a blade, and in an instant she tried to rise. Her hands, delicate yet strong, pushed against him. Her voice spilled out in strange, musical words. Sharp, frightened, almost like a bird calling out in the night. Ryan raised both hands, palms open, showing no threat. "Easy, easy," he said gently. "You're safe here." But she didn't understand. Her gaze darted across the room, landing on the med scanners, the glowing lights, the closed hatch. Her breathing was fast, shallow, panicked. She was trapped, and she knew it. Ryan stepped back, giving her space. He remembered how prisoners looked when they first woke, afraid, broken, ready to fight or run. This girl looked the same, except her fear carried something deeper. A secret. She spoke again, her words sharp, foreign. Ryan shook his head slowly. "I don't understand," he admitted softly, but he kept his eyes calm, steady, the way a soldier looks at a comrade, not an enemy. The girl's shoulders shook. Her hands pressed against her chest where the bandages wrapped her wounds. She touched them lightly, as if confused that he had helped her. Her glowing eyes studied him, uncertain. Was he savior or captor? Ryan moved slowly toward the table. He picked up a ration pack and tore it open, showing her the food. He placed it carefully beside her bed, then stepped back again. The smell of warm bread filled the air. Her eyes flicked toward it. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, cautiously, she reached out and took it. Her small hands trembled as she lifted the bread to her lips. She tasted it carefully, then ate with hunger. Ryan exhaled, relief softening the tension in his chest. Food. That was the first bridge between them. Minutes passed in silence. The girl ate slowly, her glowing eyes never leaving Ryan. Finally, she spoke again, this time softer. Her words still strange, but her tone had changed. Not anger, not fear, but curiosity. Ryan tapped his chest. "Ryan," he said firmly, pointing to himself. Then he pointed at her, raising an eyebrow. Her lips parted. A small pause, then she whispered, "Liara." The word hung in the air. Her voice carried a sound unlike human language, like water flowing over stone. Ryan repeated it, careful not to break its shape. Liara. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise. For the first time, she almost smiled, but before the fragile moment could grow, the ship's alarm screamed. Red lights flashed across the cockpit screens. Ryan rushed forward, checking the monitors. His stomach sank. Another ship had entered the sector. The signal was clear, sharp, predatory. A warship, hunting, closing in fast. He glanced back at Liara, who now clutched the bed frame, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. She knew that signal. Her trembling lips whispered a single word he did not understand. But he didn't need to. The fear in her voice told him everything. They had found her, and now they had found him too. Ryan's mind raced. He had only seconds to decide. Fight, flee, or give her up. He looked at Liara, her fragile frame trembling, her strange glow dimming in terror. He knew what the enemy wanted, and he knew what he would never do. Ryan Hale had rescued her once, and he would do it again, no matter the cost. The warning lights still flashed across the Odyssey's cockpit. Ryan's hands flew across the controls, pulling the ship into a new course. Behind him, Liara clung to the edges of the medbed, her wide, glowing eyes fixed on the red alarms. Her breathing came fast, shallow, like a hunted animal trapped in a cage. Ryan stole a quick glance at her. Her body trembled, her silver blue skin pulsing with faint light. It was not just fear, it was recognition. Whoever was chasing her, she already knew them. "Stay calm," Ryan said softly. His voice was low, steady, the same voice he once used to guide frightened rookies through battlefield chaos. "You're safe here, I promise." Of course, she could not understand his words, but maybe she could feel his tone. The radar blipped again, closer this time. The hunter ship was tracking them, its engines roaring like a beast in the void. Ryan's ship was smaller, lighter, faster, but only if he could outfly them. He tapped into manual controls, his muscles remembering the old instincts of combat. The Odyssey darted through the black, weaving between broken asteroids left from ancient collisions. Rocks the size of towers drifted slowly in the dark, deadly obstacles that could shatter his ship with one mistake. Ryan pushed the thrusters, skimming past jagged stone. The enemy followed, relentless. Liara let out a sharp cry. She fell from a bed as the ship jolted. Ryan cursed under his breath. He wanted to help her, but he couldn't leave the controls. Not now. The girl crawled slowly toward the cockpit, her movements weak but determined. When she reached the doorway, she clutched the frame, watching Ryan's hands dance over the glowing screens. For the first time, she seemed to see not just a strange human, but a protector. Her glowing eyes softened just slightly. Ryan noticed her out of the corner of his eye. "Stay low," he warned. She didn't understand the words, but she stayed, her gaze fixed on him. Her breathing steadied, as if his calmness gave her strength. The hunter's ship fired. A blast of red energy streaked past the Odyssey, slamming into a drifting asteroid. The explosion lit the void in a blinding flash. Ryan's jaw tightened. They were not trying to scare him. They wanted her dead or alive. He pulled hard on the controls, diving the ship into a narrow gap between two massive rocks. Metal groaned. Alarms screamed. Sparks flew across the cockpit. But somehow they slipped through. The hunter's ship slammed into the rocks behind them, scraping its hull. Not destroyed, but slowed. Ryan let out a breath. It wasn't victory, but it was breathing room. Silence filled the cockpit except for the hum of damaged engines. Ryan leaned back, sweat dripping down his forehead. His chest rose and fell, the adrenaline fading. He turned, finally able to look at her. Liara knelt by the doorway, her face pale, her glowing hair clinging to her skin. She had not screamed, had not tried to run. She had watched him. Her lips moved, forming a word too soft for him to catch. But it was not the language of fear. It was something else. Ryan crouched slowly, meeting her gaze. He pointed at himself again, repeating firmly, Ryan. Then he pointed at her. She hesitated, then whispered back, Liara. The name sounded clearer this time, steadier. Her voice no longer trembled. Something fragile passed between them. Trust. Not complete, not safe, but real. Ryan reached for the emergency blanket hanging on the wall. He held it out, slow and careful. She looked at it, then at him. For a moment, he thought she would refuse. But finally, she took it, wrapping it tightly around her small frame. Her glowing eyes softened as she sank to the floor, exhausted but calmer. Ryan returned to the controls, setting the ship on a safer course. But his thoughts stayed with her. Who was she? Why were they hunting her? And why, when she looked at him with those strange, star-filled eyes, did he feel something stir in his chest that he hadn't felt in years? Liara closed her eyes, resting against the wall. Her breathing slowed, her glow dimmed. Ryan watched her quietly. He knew he had crossed a line. By saving her, by protecting her, he had made himself part of her story. Whatever storm followed her, he was now caught in it. The radar beeped again, faint but steady. The enemy was still out there, searching, hunting. It was only a matter of time before they found them again. Ryan tightened his grip on the controls. His voice low, almost a whisper. We'll get through this, Liara. She did not understand his words. But maybe, just maybe, she understood the promise. And somewhere deep in the silence of space, a fragile bond began to grow. One born not of words, but of survival. Not of trust yet, but the first sparks of it. A bond that would be tested again and again. As the darkness closed in around them, the Odyssey drifted through the silence of deep space, its engines running low. Ryan sat in the cockpit, his eyes locked on the radar. The glowing dot of the hunter ship pulsed faintly behind them, steady and patient. It had not given up. It was stalking them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Liara sat curled in the corner, wrapped in the emergency blanket. Her glowing eyes flicked nervously from the radar screen to Ryan's face. She didn't need to understand the machines to know what that blinking dot meant. Danger was closing in. Ryan rubbed a hand over his tired face. His ship was fast, but it wasn't built for war. The enemy behind them was heavier, armed with weapons strong enough to turn the Odyssey into burning dust. He had escaped once, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they caught up. Think, Hale, he muttered to himself. Outrun them? No, not for long. Fight them? Not with this bucket. Hide? Maybe. His eyes drifted to the asteroid belt ahead. A sea of jagged rock floating in the void, shadows twisting in every direction. It was dangerous, but it was also cover. If he could lose them in there, maybe he could buy time. Liara's voice broke the silence. A soft, musical word full of fear. Ryan glanced at her. She pointed at the radar, then at herself, shaking her head. She was telling him something important. Ryan frowned. You think they're after you, he guessed. Of course, she didn't understand his words, but her eyes answered him. Yes. Her gaze was heavy with guilt, as if she believed she was a curse dragging him to his death. Ryan's jaw tightened. He looked straight at her, his voice steady. Then they'll have to go through me first. She didn't know the words, but the fire in his eyes told her everything. The radar beeped louder, closer now. The hunter ship had found their trail. Red lights flashed across the Odyssey as sensors picked up incoming fire. A blast of plasma tore past them, missing by only meters. The ship shook violently, alarms screaming. Ryan slammed the thrusters. The Odyssey dove into the asteroid belt, weaving between massive rocks. Chunks of ice and stone spun past the cockpit. One wrong move, and they'd be crushed. But Ryan's hands were steady. This was where he came alive, flying on the edge of death. The hunter ship followed. Its heavy guns lit up the shadows, turning the belt into a storm of fire. Asteroids shattered around them, debris spinning like knives in the dark. Liara clutched the cockpit frame, her eyes wide with terror. Ryan gritted his teeth. Hold on, he growled, pulling the ship into a sharp roll. The Odyssey scraped past a massive rock, so close the hull screamed from the pressure. The enemy's shots missed, slamming into stone instead. The explosion threw fire across the void, lighting Liara's pale face. She stared at Ryan, her fear mixing with something else, trust. Another blast struck the rear shields. The ship rocked hard, sparks showering from the control panels. Ryan hissed as heat seared his arm. But he refused to slow down. He yanked the controls, guiding the ship deeper into the shadows. Liara stumbled forward, her small hands pressing against the console beside him. Her lips moved, fast, urgent. Ryan looked at her. He couldn't understand, but she pointed sharply at a cluster of smaller asteroids ahead. Her eyes begged him to follow. Ryan hesitated only a moment, then trusted her. He steered into the cluster, diving through a maze of tight, twisting tunnels carved by time. The Odyssey groaned as it squeezed between sharp walls of stone. The hunter ship tried to follow, but its heavy frame scraped, slowing it down. Ryan's eyes lit with a fierce grin. "You clever girl," he whispered, not sure if she understood. Liara leaned close, pointing again, guiding him through another narrow path. Together, human and alien navigated the maze. The hunter ship lagged behind, its shots firing wildly in frustration. At last, Ryan spotted an opening ahead. He shot the Odyssey through, bursting back into open space. The hunter ship crashed against an asteroid wall, sparks flying. Not destroyed, but crippled. For now, they were safe. Ryan leaned back, his chest heaving. His hands trembled slightly from the rush. He turned to Liara, who was still gripping the console, her glowing eyes locked on him. For a moment, neither spoke. They didn't need to. In that silence, Ryan saw something new in her. Not just fear, not just survival, but trust. She had guided him, saved them both. And he had listened. Liara whispered softly, her voice almost a song. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Thank you." Ryan nodded once firm. His voice was rough, but his eyes were steady. "We're not done yet, Liara, but we're still breathing." The radar was clear, for now. But deep inside, Ryan knew this was only the beginning. Whoever hunted her would not stop. And by saving her, he had just declared war. The Odyssey drifted into the darkness, carrying its two unlikely passengers. One human, one alien, bound together by danger and now by trust. But in the silent distance, the hunter's broken ship began to move again. The chase was far from over. The Odyssey floated in silence after the escape, its engines humming softly. The asteroid belt was far behind them now, and for the first time in hours, there were no alarms. Ryan leaned back in the pilot's chair, his muscles aching, his arms still burned from the earlier sparks. The quiet felt strange after so much chaos. He turned his head, and there she was, Liara, sitting near the wall of the cockpit, wrapped in an emergency blanket. Her glowing eyes watched him carefully, not with fear this time, but with something different, something softer. Ryan gave a tired smile. "Well," he muttered, "we're still alive." Of course, she didn't understand, but she tilted her head slightly, as if she caught the meaning anyway. Hours passed in uneasy calm. Ryan worked on repairing the damaged panels, welding wires, replacing burned circuits. Liara stayed close, her eyes following every move. Sometimes she pointed at a tool or a wire, handing it to him before he asked. He chuckled once, shaking his head. "You're learning fast." At last, when the ship's systems were stable, Ryan pulled out 2 ration packs. He opened one for himself and slid the other across the console toward her. She hesitated, then took it. When she bit into the dry bread, her face twisted in confusion. Ryan laughed, the sound echoing in the small cabin. "Yeah, not exactly fine dining." Liara stared at him, puzzled by the laugh. Then, slowly, she tried to copy it. A strange, soft sound escaped her lips, awkward but honest. Ryan froze, then laughed harder. "Not bad," he said, shaking his head. For the first time since they met, the ship carried not fear, but a spark of humor. Later, Ryan tapped his chest again. "Ryan," he said clearly, then he pointed at her. "Liara," she whispered back, her voice like flowing water. He repeated her name, slower, softer. "Libiata." She smiled faintly, the smallest curve of her lips, and Ryan felt something warm in his chest. They tried more words. Ryan pointed to the ship. "Ship," he said. Liara tilted her head, then tried to repeat. "SHIP." He grinned, nodding. Then she tapped her chest, saying a word in her own language. He repeated it, clumsy and wrong. She laughed, really laughed this time. Her glowing hair shimmered brighter as she covered her mouth. Ryan stared, stunned by the sound. It was light, musical, a sound that didn't belong in the cold emptiness of space, but filled the Odyssey like sunlight. They spent hours like that, pointing, repeating, laughing at mistakes, slowly building a fragile bridge of words between two worlds. And with every word, the distance between them grew smaller. When fatigue pulled at them, Ryan dimmed the lights and leaned back. Liara sat beside the console, tracing shapes with her glowing finger on the glass. He leaned closer, watching as she drew. A circle, then a smaller one beside it. Stars. She pointed at them, then at herself. Ryan understood. She was telling him she came from the stars. He nodded, then pointed at himself and tapped the ship. "Earth," he said firmly. She repeated it, her voice careful. "Earth." Ryan's heart tightened. It wasn't much, just a word, but it meant something. She knew where he was from, and he knew she trusted him enough to share a piece of herself. For a while, they sat in silence, the hum of the ship steady around them. Liara's glow softened as she leaned against the wall, her breathing calm. Ryan studied her quietly. He thought of the hunters chasing her, of the fear in her eyes when she heard their signal. Who was she? Why was she so important that they would risk chasing her through deadly space? He didn't know, but he knew one thing. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was Liara, and her name was now etched into him as clearly as the stars outside. As he closed his eyes, a thought whispered in his mind. A soldier's thought, but also something more. Protect her. Not because it was duty, not because it was the right thing, but because he wanted to, far beyond them. The hunter ship was still searching, broken but not destroyed. Its crew swore vengeance, their scanners hungry for the faint glow of the alien girl. The danger had not passed. It had only paused. But inside the Odyssey, a different battle was being fought. Not with guns, not with fire, but with words, gestures, and fragile trust. A battle to build something rare in the void of space. A bond. The Odyssey drifted on the edge of a dying star system. For 2 quiet days, there had been no sign of the hunters. Ryan had almost convinced himself they had escaped. But Liara's glowing eyes told him otherwise. She never looked at peace. Every flicker of light, every echo of the engines made her tense. She knew they were still being hunted. Ryan was fixing a panel when the ship's radar screamed to life. His blood ran cold. A massive signature filled the screen. The hunters had returned, and this time they weren't hiding. They wanted him to see them. A deep, vibrating signal blasted through the comms. Not human, but translated crudely by the Odyssey system. "Human ship," the voice boomed, cold and sharp. "You carry what belongs to us. Give the girl, and you may leave alive." Liara froze, her body trembling, her glow dimmed to a pale flicker. She whispered something in her own tongue, her voice broken with fear. Ryan didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. She was begging him not to give her away. Ryan stared at the screen. The hunter ship was enormous, dwarfing the Odyssey like a predator circling prey. He could run, but not far. He could fight, but not win. For the first time, he truly felt the weight of the choice. "Give her to us," the voice repeated. "Her kind is dangerous. You do not know what she is. Protecting her will bring your death. Hand her over, human. This is your last chance." Ryan turned. Liara was pressed against the wall, her glowing hair falling across her face. Tears shimmered in her eyes, glowing like liquid stars. She shook her head violently, whispering his name. Not perfectly, not clear, but enough. Ryan. The sound of his name in her fragile voice broke something inside him. She trusted him. She believed in him. And now he had to decide if he would betray that trust. He closed his eyes for a moment. Memories flashed, soldiers he had saved, friends he had lost, orders he had followed without question. And now, in the silence of the void, one truth rang louder than all others. He couldn't give her up. Not to them. Not after everything. Ryan stood tall, his voice steady as he spoke into the comms. She's not yours, he growled. She's under my protection now. There was a long pause. Then the hunter voice replied, colder than before. Then you will die with her. The screen went dark. Alarms blared as the enemy powered up weapons. Liara let out a choked sob. Her hands clutched at Ryan's arm, weak but desperate. She shook her head again and again, whispering words he couldn't understand. But he knew what she was trying to say. Run, don't fight, save yourself. Ryan looked down at her, her glowing eyes wide with fear, her lips trembling. And he shook his head firmly. Not without you, he whispered, even if she didn't know the words. She felt the meaning. The Odyssey shook as the first blast slammed into its shields. Panels sparked, metal screamed. Ryan threw himself into the pilot's chair, gripping the controls. His ship was small, weak, but he had one advantage. He wasn't fighting for orders or for glory. He was fighting for her. Hold on, Liara, he said, his voice steady. This is going to get ugly. The hunter ship unleashed another volley. Ryan swerved, dodging between debris of dead satellites that orbited the dying star. The Odyssey shook violently, but Ryan's hands were steady. This was his battlefield. This was where he lived. Liara crawled closer to the console, her fingers glowing faintly as she touched the screen. Suddenly, strange symbols lit up across the navigation panel, symbols Ryan had never seen. Her powers were waking. She whispered something urgent, pointing to a cluster of collapsing rocks near the star's pole. Ryan glanced at her, then at the deadly zone ahead. Are you crazy? He muttered. But her eyes were fierce now, filled not just with fear but determination. For the first time, he saw not a frightened girl, but someone ready to fight for her own survival. The Odyssey dove toward the collapsing zone. The hunter ship followed, roaring with fury. The chase had begun again. But this time, Ryan wasn't running to save only himself. He was running because together, they had chosen to stand against the storm. And for the first time, Liara's glowing hand rested firmly on his. Not in fear, but in trust. The dying star burned like a red eye in the distance. Its heat and gravity twisted the space around it, pulling rocks, dust, and broken satellites into violent orbits. The Odyssey dove into that chaos, engines screaming. Behind them, the hunter ship followed, a dark predator refusing to let go. Ryan's hands gripped the controls, every muscle tight. The hull groaned, the alarms shrieked. One mistake, and they would be swallowed by the star's deadly pull. But running wasn't enough anymore. He knew this had to end, one way or another. Liara stood beside him now, no longer hiding in the shadows. Her glowing skin shimmered brighter, pulsing with a strange rhythm. Her eyes were sharp, determined. For the first time since he found her, she looked less like a frightened girl, and more like someone carrying a secret power. The hunter voice boomed again through the comms. Human, you cannot win. Surrender her, or both of you will burn. Ryan's jaw tightened. He didn't even answer this time. His silence was the answer. The hunter ship opened fire. Bolts of plasma ripped through the debris, shaking the Odyssey. One shot slammed into their shields, ripping them down to 20%. Sparks rained across the cockpit. Ryan cursed, struggling to keep the ship steady. Then Liara placed her hand on the console. Her fingers glowed brighter, and the screens flickered with symbols not of human design. The Odyssey's systems pulsed alive, energy flowing through circuits that should have been dead. Ryan stared in shock. She's powering the ship, he whispered. Liara's eyes glowed like stars as she turned to him. her voice soft but steady. "Fight," she said in broken English. Ryan blinked, stunned. It was only one word, but it was clear. She had learned it for this moment. Ryan smiled, fierce and proud. "Then let's fight." He pulled the Odyssey into a sharp dive, dodging another blast. Liara's glow spread through the ship, fueling the thrusters with bursts of speed no human engine could manage. They streaked across the star's orbit like a comet. The hunter ship roared behind, but its heavy frame struggled in the violent pull. Ryan's mind raced. He couldn't win with guns. His weapons were too weak. But maybe, just maybe, he could win with the star itself. He scanned the collapsing debris, searching for a trap. "Liara," he said quickly, pointing at the largest cluster of rocks spiraling near the star. She followed his gesture, then nodded. Her hands glowed brighter, feeding energy into the engines. Together, they dove straight toward the deadly zone. The hunters fired again. Shots scorched across their hull, shaking the ship. Liara staggered, but Ryan caught her arm, steadying her. "Stay with me," he said firmly. She nodded, her lips trembling but her eyes fierce. The Odyssey weaved through the collapsing rocks, twisting paths only a desperate pilot would dare. The hunter ship followed, slower but determined. It fired, breaking apart the asteroids. Each explosion lit the void like thunder. Then Ryan saw it, a massive fragment of metal drifting dangerously close to the star's pole. If timed right, he could use it. He glanced at Liara. Her eyes met his, and in that moment no words were needed. She understood. Ryan pulled the Odyssey into a sharp curve, racing past the fragment. The hunter ship followed, its guns locked on them. At the perfect moment, Ryan shouted, "Now!" Liara placed both hands on the console, her glow blazing like fire. The Odyssey surged with impossible speed, blasting past the fragment. The sudden burst pulled the metal shard directly into the hunter's path. The Predator's ship slammed into it. The collision ripped across its hull, sending it spinning toward the star. The hunters screamed through comms as their ship broke apart. Flames consumed them as the star's gravity dragged their vessel into the burning abyss. And then silence. Ryan slumped back in his chair, his chest heaving. They had done it. They had survived, but only because of her. Liara sank to the floor, her glow fading, her body weak from the effort. Ryan hurried to her side, catching her before she collapsed. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes opened slowly. She looked up at him, her lips trembling with effort. "Ryan," she whispered. He brushed her hair gently from her face. "I'm here," he said. Her glowing hand reached for his, pressing weakly against his chest. Her voice was faint, broken. "Safe together." The words were simple, but they carried more than meaning. They carried trust, gratitude, and something deeper, something Ryan hadn't felt in years. He held her close, his voice low, steady. "Yes, Liara, together." The Odyssey drifted free from the star's pull. The void stretched endlessly before them, filled with countless stars. Dangers still waited out there. Mysteries still surrounded her. But for now, there was peace. Ryan looked out at the stars, then down at the fragile alien girl resting in his arms. Once, he thought his days of fighting were over. Once, he thought he had nothing left to protect. But now he knew the truth. He had found something worth protecting again. And maybe, just maybe, something worth loving. The Odyssey sailed into the endless night, carrying not just a human and an alien, but a bond born of danger, fire, and hope. A story written across the stars. One that was only beginning.